Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yes, Mark,
Okay.
thanks for joining. Yeah,
That's
look,
my pleasure.
I know that you want to. There are some things that you will talk about, some things that you won't talk about. But do you have any response to Prince Andrew's arrest today?
None whatsoever. No. I have nothing to add to that. I wasn't there. I never met him. So there's nothing I can add to this.
Yeah, but for the victims, I'm sure there has to be some sort of satisfaction in it that they feel that at least someone is, are paying some consequences for it.
Well, from what I understand, he was arrested for crimes related to his position with the government, nothing to do with the thing with the girls. But that's not the topic I want to talk about.
Yes, you want to talk about what? About his
what I
death.
want to talk about is Jeffrey's death, which is actually a murder. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but with the release of the files, there's been more information coming out. For instance, the pathologist that actually did the autopsy, Dr. Kristen Roman, she was deposed afterwards, and in her deposition, she stated that she was told not to take DNA evidence, and she was prohibited from going to the crime scene, which is very unusual in this kind of a case. We also found that the FBI destroyed the hard drives, the information on hard drives in the prison, because they swapped them out when they shouldn't have, and they were warned that swapping out the hard drives would lose the information. There's a lot more information coming out, and also there's rumors out that there was a second autopsy. There wasn't a second autopsy. There was only one. The results of which, on the cause of death on the initial death certificate, it said pending further study, because Dr. Roman and Dr. Bodden, who was also at the autopsy, came out of the autopsy and they said they couldn't call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. That doesn't appear anywhere. A few days later, Barbara Sampson, the chief pathologist, she calls it a suicide, and she never saw Jeff's body. So the question becomes, what is she basing her information on? And when the death certificate says pending further study, many pathologists have told me it usually takes weeks before you get an answer because they're studying something. Well, more recently, a group of pathologists have latched onto this and they contacted me. They're not doing this on my behalf, and I'm not paying for this or anything, so I don't want anybody to think this is being skewed to my favor. But I gave them all of the autopsy information, the photographs, all the records I had, and they've been investigating it. They've been doing the proper study. Okay, and they're coming out with a report, and it's going to be peer-reviewed, and it will be released afterwards. But they'll basically be showing that this wasn't a suicide. But I'm not going to give any details now, because I'm waiting for this report to be released after it's peer-reviewed. And then the issue becomes, look, factually, there's sort of three ways to die, right? You can commit suicide, you could die of natural causes, or you can have an unnatural death, either an accident or you're killed. So, if people want to believe that Jeffrey committed suicide, then all the information that we have pointing away from that could just be considered to be circumstantial evidence and ignored in their mind. Okay, the guards weren't doing their job, or okay, the fire alarm system was made inoperable in the prison. That's one thing that many people don't know, that the fire alarm system was made inoperable, and that controls motion sensors and doors. Okay, but it was a suicide. But once the suicide gets knocked out of the box as a possibility, well, then you're left with natural causes. We know Jeff didn't die of natural causes. The other one is an unnatural death. And we know he wasn't hit by a bus. Who can do that? The DOJ has been covering up this whole case. It started when Bill Barr came out and said that after the death, that he personally watched the videotape of the camera outside of the tier, and he saw that nobody went in or out of the tier, and that convinced him it was a suicide. When I heard that initially, I realized this has to be a cover-up. Because number one, why is the Attorney General personally watching the videotape? That didn't make sense to me. Also, he led you to believe that in the videotape he saw that you could see the door to the tier, because he said he saw nobody went in or out. Okay, and the other part is there were 12 or so other prisoners on the tier that would not have to go and come from the tier in order to harm somebody else in the tier. The fact that he completely ignored that possibility that another inmate or somebody put in there to be an inmate could have done harm. The fact that he ignored that, to me, is like that also, it doesn't make sense. So his conclusion, well, stick a pin in that. With the recent release last year of the videotape that he was referring to, it's been shown, number one, you cannot see the door to the tier. And it's been shown you can get to that door and leave from that door without being caught on that camera. There's also the instance of the orange blur going up the steps, whether it's an inmate in an orange outfit, or they're saying maybe guards were carrying a pile of sheets or something up the steps, but somebody was going towards that tier. So, if I can use the language, just what the fuck was Bill Barr talking about? That nobody went in or out when he couldn't see the door. And you can now see that somebody went up. And we know that that videotape was doctored and edited and pieced together. Of course, the people who study that kind of thing, they even know what program was used to manipulate that videotape. And then, so
Mark,
nothing points to suicide. What?
Okay, so Mark, let me ask you this, because you are really adamant about this. You are adamant about that someone, Andy, can you get me Nancy Mace? We had it, I think, earlier today. Let me know if you have it. But you're really adamant about this death because you think there's something fishy. Someone asked in the chat, did you get a chance? And I don't know if I've ever asked you that. I don't know if we've ever talked about it. Did you get a chance to identify your brother's body?
I was the one who did identify his body. I'm the next.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Okay. So you identified his body. And so, but
Yes.
You're really adamant about him not killing himself. You think that this was a homicide and there are people involved. There are also.
Let me make something clear, Don. When I first heard that he was dead from an apparent suicide, I heard it that morning on CNN. The government didn't notify me as they claim. I heard it on CNN. I was having breakfast in a hotel in Virginia. And the next day I had to come back to New York to identify his body. And then they did the autopsy. In the meanwhile, overnight, we got Dr. Michael Barden to be there because as the next of kin, I had the right to have my own pathologist witness it. And I fully believed he committed suicide when I heard it. At that moment, I had no reason to doubt it. Why should I doubt it? I heard it on the news, and I know he was facing a potentially long time in jail. But other things that are not really that public is when Jeffrey was first arrested, his attorneys called me and asked me if I would participate in his bail. So I said, sure, of course. I said, put up my house in Florida, so that to help it, because if more people participate in your bail, you're more likely to get bail. And obviously, he didn't get bail, so he was in jail. Then they called me a few weeks later and they asked me if not only would I put up my house, but would I guarantee Jeffrey's entire bail? They were going to appeal the bail decision. Like we hear that, P. Diddy's tried to appeal his bail decision a few times. So I said, okay, I'll guarantee Jeffrey's entire bail, in essence, doubling it. And he also had another friend putting up some assets for bail. So this would have been the highest bail in U.S. history with all these assets put up. And he had a hearing, would have come up in another week or two tops to have the appeal. Okay. And I could see if they had that hearing and the bail was denied again. Okay, if you want to commit suicide, go ahead, because you don't want to spend a year in jail awaiting trial. But it makes no sense to anybody why he would kill himself prior to that bail hearing. Because if he got bail, he'd be living in his house. He'd have an ankle monitor on. He'd have armed guards and cameras to make sure, he didn't go anywhere. And it doesn't make any sense for him to kill himself prior to that hearing for bail.
So look, folks are wondering that they feel that you're defending your brother. I don't think that you're defending your brother. I think you're trying to make sense of his death. But you're not defending what he's accused of, correct?
No, absolutely not. No, that's not my job. I'm not his defense attorney. I wasn't around. I wasn't there. My opinion on, he was wrong. I'm not saying he was innocent. He was guilty of things. He pled guilty. He told me that he was, in 2006, in the early days, he told me that he was stupid because he was with girls that were too young. So I'm not defending him at all. That's not my job here. That's not my purpose. I'm just concerned that my brother was killed in a federal prison under federal protection. And now the other thing is, recently, also in the recent congressional testimony, Bill Barr was asked about Dr. Barden's opinion, that he thought it was more of a homicide. And Bill Barr said under oath, he said, well, Bodden came after the fact. And that's pure bullshit, because Bodden was there for the entire autopsy. Dr. Roman, Dr. Sampson, the chief medical examiner, the one who eventually called it a suicide, she came after the fact. She wasn't at the autopsy. She didn't see Jeffrey's body. But, and they're taking her word for it. Now, let me be clear, too. Dr. Bodden used to be the chief medical examiner of New York. He used to have the position that Barbara Sampson had at that time. So you have two highly qualified people, one who saw the body, who said, this looks like a homicide, and the other one who didn't see the body calls it a suicide. It doesn't make sense.
So speaking of, you mentioned, you said that some of the testimony or whatever, but Congress has been looking into this. I want to play this because it seems to me like you two, this Congresswoman, and you are on the same page. Here it is.
Do you think Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
I'm sorry, did he kill himself?
Do you think he killed himself?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
What do you think happened?
I think he was murdered. And I don't know if it was an intel agency or, what it was. I don't have that information. But I was looking at the photos of his jail cell last week on my flight home from session. The thin sheet that was like, an inch wide, 2 inches wide, it was like 3 times the width of somebody's neck. I don't know how you hang yourself on your knees. And where are the photos of him hanging himself? Those did not exist in the files either. And, the data from the video cameras was erased. And all of a sudden, just a few days ago, a week or two ago, there's all of a sudden video of something orange going up the stairs toward his jail cell that we didn't know about. It's all too suspicious. I don't believe he killed himself.
Okay, do you think that he was a foreign asset, or do you think perhaps even a domestic asset? And that could be why he was taken out in prison?
I think if it's possible, he was a dual agent. And I think it's possible he was an dual agent of Israel and also the CIA. I wrote a letter to the CIA, I believe it was yesterday. I believe that the CIA is in possession of documents that Congress should have access to, as to should the American public. I think this also goes beyond sex trafficking.
All right,
yes.
so that's enough. That's enough. That's it. First of all, a couple of things. Do you believe that he was some sort of foreign asset?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. Jeffrey and I didn't socialize together for many years, although we were always in communication by phone and email. But, prior to his death, I didn't see him for 7 years. And that brings us back to 2012. And between 2004 to 2012, that 8-year period, maybe I saw him a half a dozen times.
So you don't know if he was some asset of a foreign government or some sort of intelligence agency or Mossad or anything like that?
I know he had lots of connections around the world, but I have no idea what he was doing.
She is saying, now, do you agree with her on the circumstances surrounding his death, about kneeling and the size of the shirt and all of that?
Well, the thing with it, for 4 years, we were trying to find out what position Jeffrey's body was in when it was found, because that's an important part of an investigation. We couldn't find that out. Okay, and that's also why the pathologist, wanted to see the crime scene and see what was happening, and she was prevented. The way, finally, when the DOJ report came out a couple of years ago, they said that he was in a seated position with his legs extended in front of him, and he was hanging from the top bunk. And when they cut him down or tore him down, it's questionable what was actually done. They said his buttocks was 1.5 inches off the ground, or an inch and a half off the ground. So that means, if you put your legs out and your buttocks is off the ground, the bulk of your body weight is hanging on your neck. It's also questionable if that thin strip of bedsheet could hold his weight. I actually purchased prison bed sheets from a supply company that supplies them, and I tested it, and it's questionable if it could hold Jeffrey's weight, especially a lot of times if a body is dying from strangulation, it convulses, it shakes around. I think that would have torn the sheet if he was hanging the way they said. Also, there was handheld video camera. When the fire department EMTs got to the prison from the call, Jeffrey's body had already been moved to the infirmary, which is against all protocol. Because, let me be clear, when Jeffrey was found, the autopsy showed that he was dead for at least 2 hours. Okay, and there's no argument to that. He was dead for at least 2 hours. So why did they move the body? It was a crime scene. They were supposed to call the medical examiner and let them come do their investigation. But when the EMT guys got there, He was already in the infirmary, and they told me that there was somebody there with a handheld video camera, which is also part of the prison protocol. There's supposed to be somebody there with a handheld video camera, taping everything. Even into the hospital, there was somebody with a handheld video camera. Now, where's the tape? We can't get those tapes. We were not able to get the 911 call, which the fire department supposedly holds on for a couple of years. We were never able to get the 911 call. We've all heard the 911 call from the George Floyd case and other cases that have been, in the news. We weren't able to get Jeffrey's. Right.
Yeah. So let me jump in here for a second. I've asked you this question before. I'm going to ask you again. Who do you think did it?
Well, you get Bill Barr, who was the Attorney General of the United States, obviously, covering something up. And then also in the recent congressional testimony, you have Kash Patel, when he was questioned about it. He said, it's suicide when you see one. I actually laughed out loud when I heard that jackass say that, because how many suicides has he seen? And what makes him an expert? He's not a forensic pathologist. He's not a doctor. He's a joker. It's suicide when you see one. So he's like perpetuated this bullshit. Okay. So, who are they covering up for? Right? Where's the cover up?
That's what I'm asking you. Who are they covering up for?
Patel killed him, and I don't think Bill Barr killed him. So who are they protecting? That's the question.
Who is it?
Well, I don't speculate, but you could speculate. Who do you think? Out of all the people that might want to see Jeffrey dead, supposedly there's a long list, how many would have the ability to have this orchestrated and have the DOJ cover it up? That's a much smaller list. That's a much smaller list.
Do you think Donald Trump had something to do with it?
I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Have you spoken to Ghislaine Maxwell?
No, I haven't spoken to Glenn in probably 20 some odd years.
I have not asked you of this since they've had her moved to this minimum. Do you have any comment on that?
No, I'm not involved with her case. And, it's in public. Her lawyer said they cut some kind of deal. He was the one that said it was a quid pro quo situation. So, my opinion on that is just as valid or invalid as anybody else's. Did
you know Les Wexner?
No, I never met Les Wexner.
Well, they're saying that's where Jeffrey got his wealth from, was from Les.
Well, he made a lot of money while he was working with Les Wexner. He worked with Les Wexner for many years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were also very good friends. It wasn't just a business relationship. They traveled together, they did things together. Jeffrey would tell me some stories about things they did, Yeah, they were close.
Well, they were saying that they had a relationship possibly, because Les was,
I have no idea about that. I have no idea.
You don't know about that. Okay, no. So look, Les Wexner has been downplaying his relationship with your brother, saying that he didn't know him that well and didn't spend that much time. At least that is what the Congress people who have interviewed him recently have said. But I want to play this for you and then get your response. This is Les Wexner. Here it is.
It was just regularly done. Answer the question. 5 words, okay? Answer the question. Okay.
So this was during an interview or a deposition, and his attorney whispers in his ear, "I'm going to effing kill you if you answer another question with more than 5 words." You have any response to that?
I didn't see that before. I find it funny. No, I have nothing. No comment on that. Other than I think it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think should happen, if you will? What do you think should happen with Prince Andrew and others who are
again? I have no opinion on that. I don't know what he's being. First of all, I don't know if he's been officially charged yet. I know he was arrested, and I think they said they have like 96 hours in which to charge him or something. So I don't know anything more about that than you probably know more than I do.
Okay, but let me ask you this: if you believe that someone is covering up for someone, the person who is responsible for Jeffrey's death, then that means the files that they have released are not showing that information, and that means that they're not being transparent about the investigation.
Well,
so what do you think?
The files have been scrubbed and are being scrubbed. We have found some files that were kind of damning, and then when we go to try to find them again, they're gone. So this has happened in more than one instance. Had people that were looking through the files, for all kinds of things, and they found certain things, then they couldn't be found again. So you tell me what's happening.
Who's scrubbing it?
Well, who's got control of it? The DOJ.
The DOJ. And why?
To protect somebody. Or
right.
somebody.
Mark, I appreciate when you come on. Did you get to say anything? Because you always want to talk about the investigation in your brother's death, and I want to honor the commitment, not the agreement, but you said you wanted to talk about it, and I said yes, we will talk about your brother's death, and we will spend the bulk of the time talking about that. But I'll ask you other things, and that's what we've done. Is there anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, I hope you're successful in your lawsuits from your recent encounter.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I forget the whole world is watching. As I will, and you would not look at not to the extent of you and your brother, but I've never seen you, and I think that is on purpose, because I can't imagine walking around and being Jeffrey Epstein's brother and just the response that you would get. Am I out of pocket for saying that?
Well, no, it's just, first of all, that's why I never appear on camera. I'm not looking to be recognized, and this isn't about me. I'm not looking for 15 minutes of fame. I've already had that in my past, so I'm happy. And this is just about looking into Jeffrey's murder. That's all I'm interested in. Let
me ask you then, which is fine. What do you say to the victims, though? Because your brother's accused of some horrific things, and
I have nothing. I have no comment on that field. That's not something I will talk about, because what happens is no matter what I say, it's going to be misconstrued to fit somebody's agenda. So I'm not commenting. I'm not answering those questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. I appreciate you calling in and speaking. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Be well.
Thank you. Be well. And look, he doesn't pull any punches. And I think you know what he's saying. He may not want to say it explicitly, and I understand why. In the jail, can the sheets hold a body weight? How was he found? All of those things. I think that makes sense. But also, according to him, he has seen some of the files, and he knows people who have seen some of the files, and then they go back to look for something that they have seen before. And again, according to him, he says it's not there. So, and he believes that they are covering up for someone with the files and covering up for someone for his death. Jeffrey Epstein's brother. Okay. Another word from our sponsor. Support comes from Bio Optimizers. All right. We talk